And on the line with us is Lori Wallach, the Executive Director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. Tradewatch.org is the website, or citizen.org/trade. And Lori, of course, can be tweeted at Wallach, W-A-L-L-A-C-H, Lori, L-O-R-I. And Public Citizens Global Trade Watch is PCGTW, at all of the above. Lori, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
So what's the latest in the U.S.-China trade situation?
Well, it's a little bit up in the air. The talks have broken down, so there is no imminent agreement. And I would say that overall, the situation is that while we definitely have a serious problem with our current China trade policies and something needs to be done, it's not clear that this administration is going to be able to succeed in the changes that are needed, and that's really for two different reasons.
Okay, and what are those reasons?
Well, first of all, the only way that China is going to change the conduct is the interlocking elite leadership that is the business world, that is the government, and is the military, and they're all intermeshed. It's not separate like here. It has to become in the interest of those interests to make a change. Mm-hmm. And their biggest interest is maintaining power. So we needed really to have our allies, the European Union, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Australia, everyone working together with us to just cut out all potential markets so that when everyone basically said to China, either change your rules or you can't sell stuff here, the elite would say, oh God, we're going to lose the deal we've made with our public, which is they'll give away their rights because they're going to have a job based on this predatory trade policy. Well, if all of a sudden the trade policy isn't going to work, they're going to have to change those policies to continue to have the economy churning. Now they can kind of try and go around the U.S. and cut us off. So number one, we didn't make this move, which is important to make. The trade representative is exactly right. We cannot go on as is. But with some of the other actions other parts of the administration took that have gotten a bunch of our allies annoyed on trade, among other things, we're out there on our own. Second thing is what they're asking for. So they're asking for some of the right stuff. China needs to stop ripping off U.S. technology for our industrial production. If an invention is made here, why shouldn't U.S. workers make it here? However, a lot of the things that need to actually be fixed to have a different role for China in the global economy that works for working people here and there aren't on the agenda. And that is, for instance, dealing with the absolute absence of labor rights, human rights, even the right to organize and protest anything, so that you have U.S. multinationals hand in glove with this government in China offshoring our jobs to pay people horrific wages and literally jail people who try and organize a union. So some of the asks for the fixes are not quite right. It's a problem that needs to be fixed, but it's not clear we're going to get there right now.
Yeah. So we're kind of nibbling around the edges, it seems, in some ways. Can we talk tariffs for a minute?
Sure.
This country was built on tariffs. The federal government budget of the United States, 90% of the federal budget during the Thomas Jefferson administration, for example, was revenue from tariffs. It was in the neighborhood of 90% right up to the Civil War. About 2/3 of our government funding until World War I came from tariffs, about 1/3 of it up until World War II, and now it's pretty negligible. Tariffs made us competitive. It made American manufacturing competitive with international manufacturing for the American market for forever, and you know this stuff as well as I do. Ravi Batra is an economist. He teaches at Texas Methodist University, and the New York Times bestselling author of a number of books on economics. And he wrote a piece over the weekend that he pointed out to me, and I haven't yet had an opportunity to really go on a rant on it on this show, but it was pretty startling to me. He said that tariffs don't actually increase prices. And I was like, how is that possible? And he's like, here it is, very straightforward. Say that there's a company in China that's making T-shirts, and selling them into the U.S. market for $20. And, and then in the United States, they sell them for $40. And you put a 25% tariff on those T-shirts. So now the T-shirts, instead of costing $20, are costing 25 or 30 or whatever 25% plus is, right? That would be $25 to come into the United States. Well, that Chinese manufacturer has elbow room in their profits. which is the first place where you would expect to see a change. But the bigger place, he said, what happens is that American manufacturers or other manufacturers, Indonesian, Malaysian, or whatever, will say, hey, we can sell that even if the tariff was universal, we can sell that T-shirt for less. And so they start competing with the Chinese manufacturer, and at that point, the Chinese have to lower their price in order to hold on to their market. And he gave example after example after example, throughout history where tariffs did not raise prices. This whole mantra is, oh, that tariff, that 25%, all of that is being paid for by the American consumer. And yet we're not seeing inflation, product inflation here in the United States. And I think it's because of what Ravi just described. What do you think about all that?
Well, I mean, he has part of the answer for sure, except if there's a product that really is monopolized not only in one country where the price can be controlled, but where they're competing suppliers, for sure, what he said is right. But the other factor, if you think about the math that you just described, consider that Nike pair of tennis shoes that, for instance, is $120 retail. The price when it gets into the U.S. with the tariffs paid, with the transportation, with the actual cost of the shoe is some small modicum of that. Let's just make it up, $30. Right. So there's $90 of space in there. So that just assume a big tariff is hit, and now the price, the wholesale price, goes to $50 instead of $30. It's still $120 you could charge a consumer. That's what the market will bear. The profit can be compacted a little bit without jamming the consumer with a higher price. Right. And that's another feature of why there is no automatic increase in prices when tariffs are put in place.
Yeah, makes absolutely perfect sense. And so this is, the trade war with China and all this kind of stuff. One of the pieces of this that has a lot of people concerned is China's basically, threat to do something about rare earth minerals. We used to have a fairly substantial rare earth mineral mine, I believe, in California, and we shut it down because China was mining and exporting rare earth minerals at basically below the cost that they could be produced in the United States. Do I have that right, first of all? And if so, is the alternative to Chinese rare earth minerals, if this continues, to reboot that mine in California?
Well, to reboot domestic production and also to seek those inputs from other places. So part of the downside to sort of China's predatory strategy is what they try and do is they either buy up the competitors in other countries, or they price stuff below the cost of production and force out of business the competitors. Then they have a monopoly in something that's crucial. The rare earth minerals are, for instance, used for cell phones and other things we all use. Then they raise the price. So really, in a certain way, if China's monopolized a market and then China's production becomes subject to tariffs and sanctions, it creates an incentive for not just U.S. production to restart, but in other countries, which that kind of redundancy is in our interest anyway for national security.
Absolutely.
So it could be an interesting incentive to actually bring back online competing suppliers.
Yeah, because we're in a situation right now where we literally cannot build a missile without rare earths from China.
We're in a very bad situation broadly. For instance, there are many different kinds of heavy, large steel beams that we need for fundamental infrastructure, for bridges, for highways, things we need just to have our country functioning, skip the military angle, that we basically have seen put out of business here. We have to import them. For a continental-sized country of this size with this kind of an economy, that is just not an acceptable state of affairs for our own domestic economic security, really, as well as our national security.
Right. Yeah, it's serious stuff. And finally, Lori, we're talking with Lori Wallach, the Executive Director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. Tradewatch.org is the website. What's up with Donald Trump, essentially rebranding NAFTA, and how's that going?
Oy.
Yeah, so, that's what I figured. We have 2 minutes.
That was the expression to use without using profanity. So here's the situation, which everyone hold on to your chairs, because it is very likely we're going to see a NAFTA showdown in the next 48 hours, which is to say the Democrats have been very clear. There must be improvements to the deal on NAFTA that Trump signed last year. It's necessary if the deal is going to be good for working people. The deal right now that was signed won't stop outsourcing of jobs, and it would lock in monopoly protections for pharmaceutical corporations that would keep our medicine prices high. So the Democrats have all said, hey, we will support a NAFTA that stops the ongoing damage, and we want to work with you to improve the thing you signed to get it to a place where it does that. But as is, yeah, it's not going to fix things. It's going to raise medicine prices. It's got to be fixed. And now the administration had been saying, we'll work with you. And I think that's really what the trade representative intends to do. But President Trump has been on a Trumpian temper tantrum. And so now he's kicking and screaming and saying, I want the vote now, before anything gets changed.
Right.
Except the Democrats are majority in the House. So the Speaker has said, we're not voting on another, Democrats are not going to support another trade agreement. That's bad for American working people. So now it's going to be an eyeball to eyeball between Pelosi and Trump. Is he going to make the changes, or is she going to have to stop the agreement?
Yeah, remarkable. And one last question. We have just a minute until we hit this hard break. Do you think that if the Democrats support, quote, free trade as opposed to fair trade going into this election, that Donald Trump will eat their lunch?
I'm very scared of that, Tom. When I hear Joe Biden 2 months ago at the University of Pennsylvania bemoaning the fact we're not in the TPP, when he 2 weeks ago said, yes, he supported NAFTA and that was the right thing to do, it makes me want to rip my hair out. Thank God Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Tim Ryan, other members who are running are saying the smart thing, which is, yes, Trump was half right. Our trade agreements have been terrible for working people. Our trade policies have been corporate rigged. The difference is some of those candidates, unlike Biden, understand we have to replace the old system, not go back to it.